Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
Hi there, and this is Meanwhile Here on Earth with me, your host, Peter Robbins. You are watching or listening on KGRA Digital Broadcasting, and you can watch all of our shows live on Mondays, 7 to 9 Eastern Standard Time on KGRA-DB. Just go to the top of the page and click Live Stream. No major monologue, except to say that it's summer. It's a time for most of us relaxing, well, depending on what you do. I was just kind of caught off guard yesterday by the sad news that the wonderful actress who really broke ground in the original Star Trek, Michelle, was a friend of a good friend of mine, and somebody who was not just a pioneer in terms of the entertainment business, but went on to help recruit more and more people of color to NASA, and lived to be 89. One anecdote that kind of caught me off guard was after the first season, remember the original Star Trek only ran for 2 years, she had decided to leave the show, and she was friends with Dr. Martin Luther King. And he contacted her and he said, "Do not do that." And she was completely caught off guard and asked why. And he said in so many words, "You are a pioneer. What you are doing is important, and your role on this show is important, and the character you play." And she did, and we are all the beneficiaries of it. Our guest tonight is a good and true friend of mine, a close colleague, who I had the great fortune of seeing and spending time with last month at the International MUFON Symposium in Denver. And Earl Grey Anderson is, in fact, MUFON's state director for Southern California and is an active member of MUFON's Experiencer Resource Team, or ERT. He has hosted both Experiencer workshops at this year's he hosted both Experiencer workshops and did a great job of it. I was there at this year's symposium in Colorado. Earl has personally investigated over 800 UFO reports and specializes in Experiencer high strangeness cases. He has appeared on multiple radio shows, podcasts, and television shows, such as Unidentified with Demi Lovato, the Travel Channel's Storming Area 51 special, and the season finale of Motor Trend Television's Motor Mythbusters, Cars versus UFOs. Earl teaches a very popular and fully accredited course in ufology at Los Angeles' Otis College of Art and Design, where I had the honor of being a visiting guest speaker. A native of Southern California, Earl is also known as a published singer, songwriter, guitarist with 3 CDs under his belt. He dotes on his 3 children and 3 grandchildren and lives happily with his wife, Lisa, and their 2 cats, Gigi and Thor. And Earl Grey Anderson, I hope that Gigi and Thor are watching tonight. Welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth.
Hello there, Peter. It's good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, it seems like we haven't seen each other for weeks.
Yeah, a couple. I always have to bring my cats into the, into the picture. They probably won't be visiting us, so they'd be knocking things off, That's why we know it's not a flat earth, right? Because cats would have knocked everything off of it by now. Correct.
It's true. It's true. Science leads the way once again.
That's true. Yeah.
I've got so many questions for you that we only touched on when we had a chance to get together. And while it's a great part of any conference, just hanging out and catching up, there's a lot of distractions and a lot of people. So some of them went kind of only half answered or addressed. And my first question right now, to start off the show in a way I usually do, is where were you born?
I was born here in Southern California, Santa Monica, at St. John's Hospital, Santa Monica.
So you're really very close to where you started out.
Yeah. I traveled all over the place, but this is home. Has its good things and bad things. Traffic, bad, but access to the beach, to the high desert, to the mountains, music venues and bookstores, etc., is all good. So, it weighs out pretty fairly. So here I am still.
Any siblings?
I've got one sister that I'm, don't really see. And that's kind of it. My parents are both gone, and a lot of my relatives are living in Arizona and places like that. I keep in touch with a couple of them, but there you go. Kind of last of the Mohicans here.
Yeah. Earl, tell us a little bit about your dad.
Sure. My dad was he was born in 1929. He was a tailor in a B-17 in World War II, flying over the European theater. Yes, he did see Foo Fighters. He didn't like the ideas of UFOs being in our atmosphere around our planet. So he was not sure what they were. I think that he thought they were some kind of an atmospheric phenomenon, but they, as we know, they were under intelligent control. So, but I think my dad had a little bit of a problem because of his, religious background with the whole UFO phenomenon.
I don't think I've ever had a guest who had a relative who actually ever experienced Foo Fighters, as a pilot during the war.
Yeah, they were pretty common, especially, it was all over the European theater. I'm not sure if they saw them as much in the Pacific, if at all. But my dad did say that he'd seen them. He thought it was something like St. Elmo's fire, or
sure,
because he just didn't have room in his philosophy for life other than us in the universe. That was my dad, but he was a great man. I loved him very much. Anyway,
as you became, I'll get to that later. And we'll speak a bit about your mom and quite a bit the second half of the show. Growing up as a kid, and I mean a real kid, 5-7 years old, what were your thoughts, if any, about what you wanted to be when you were what we'll laughingly call a grown-up?
Clearly, I wanted to be an astronaut, like a lot of us kids did. Yeah, I was just born during the, 1958. Now you know how old I am. It was right there when, my mom was involved with Project Redstone and other things, and was very, very much, the TV would always be on, for any of the early space shots that we did, and I loved it. That was my escape in a way. I had like the old Time Life books that had the beautiful pictures, and I'd always find like satellites and planetary, paintings by Chesley Bonestell and people like that, just those classic ideas of what the surface of Mars might have looked like. And I would put them around myself, sort of like a fortress. And that's where
those
I would play.
Illustrations were the stuff that dreams were made of for us. Yes. I remember as a kid growing up in New York, the Museum of Natural History had a wonderful selection of postcards, not surprisingly, and a number of them wonderful illustrations of the Earth from the moon. Can you even imagine? and things like that, along with the dinosaurs, that ignited my imagination as a kid. As a young person, were you much of a moviegoer or a reader?
I was a voracious reader. And I
And
love movies too, I mean, yeah.
was your interest drawn to books on this subject, or were there other subjects that you were drawn to as well?
Well, I know my dad kind of started me early on the reading. That was my dad, he would
Beautiful.
just, plant me on his knee, and he'd have the Dr. Seuss books and that I loved, and I seemed to pick up reading really, really easily and really quickly. And the first books I seem to remember reading would just be things like again, we had the Time Life condensed books and stuff of King Arthur and Huckleberry Finn, and just the classics for children. Yeah. And I think I started on those, and I worked my way up to things like Ray Bradbury and eventually, of course, Arthur C. Clarke and Asimov, and was quite the science fiction fan, still am.
Was your movie and television life, was your movie life something that began on television, or did you and your family go out to the movies, or did you go to the movie theater with friends?
My parents, we had a drive-in theater that we'd go to. And I remember, I think the first movie that I remember going to in that way was Pinocchio at a drive-in theater.
Wow. Drive-in theaters. Wonderful.
Mm-hmm. And let's see. Of course, we had the $1 Million Movie, which in now today's terms, they were bragging that the films cost $1 million to make back then. And of course, now that might pay the catering bill.
That was a big part of my regular television viewing. The world of visual arts and music, of course, entered greatly into your adult life to this day. Remember when those interests were triggered, and how so?
Oh, you'll like this one. My mom, she worked mostly just hung out with it. It was my uncle's thing. It was a theater group in Santa Monica called Turnabout Theater, and they would do children's theater, and then they had more kind of grown-up fare at night. But they had a cleaning woman there, had a daughter. Her name was Odetta Furious. And yes, it was that Odetta. She was a friend of my mom's, and my mom invited her to come over to our house in Venice, is where we lived, Venice, California. And I remember my mom had her record. I still have it. I still have that same record album. It had Odetta's face on the front and had things like Froggy Went a Courtin' and stuff like that on it.
How did your mom know Odetta?
She was the cleaning lady's daughter, and they heard her singing. She was working, and Foreman Brown was the name of the gentleman that owned this theater group and the theater itself. And he said, she is really, really talented. She needs to be able to back herself up. And he got her a little folk guitar and guitar lessons. And that's where it all started for her. She was a teenager. And so my mom invited her. This would have been like 1964, it would have been 63, maybe even 62. I remember our kitchen was painted yellow. It was kind of a cheery room. And Odetta was sitting there with her guitar playing Froggy Went a Courtin'. And it seemed so natural, it was just came out of her and was this beautiful mode of expression. And I was just entranced by it. It was just for that song's worth of time. There I was kind of, watching Froggy going through the escapades, courting his love interest. And it just seemed like such a natural thing to do. And so that stuck with me. My dad sang too. He was a classically trained singer, so he would be singing aria.
Oh my gosh!
He would be singing, Mrs. Solness by Beethoven or St. Matthew's Passion by Bach, things like that. So I grew with, it was just normal to go around and sing, and to have a guitar and be able to back yourself. That was Odetta. That was from Odetta. And of course, Bob Dylan said that she was his greatest influence.
So, did you start to sing or play an instrument at that time in your life, or just enjoy music more?
Just really enjoyed music. When I was about 12 years old, I got my first acoustic guitar, and I found out by junior high school, I had a really just a very smart English teacher, and she said she heard me, just playing, at break between classes, and she said, "That's really good. You wrote that song?" Because I was already writing stuff. It was easier for me to write a song that had two chords than try to find a song that had two chords. That would be, I could just play like two or three chords. It's very kind of menial guitar work. So she started giving me extra credit if I would go in front of the class and perform a new song in front of the class. So that's kind of where I became naturally comfortable in front of a crowd, and singing and playing music. That's kind of where that, I got extra credit. Other kids would have to write out a big report, but I would write a song, hand in the lyrics to the teacher, and that would be an assignment.
Your interest in being an astronaut as a kid aside, and in the Mercury program, and your mom working on the Redstone project, do you remember your first awareness of the subject of anomalous, unidentified flying objects and what you thought of that?
Sure. Well, that goes into my mom's story a bit. I know you wanted to touch on that during the second hour, but if you'd like me to prelude that.
Let's start right now with, tell us a bit about your mom and her background, because I find her one of the most intriguing people that I will never meet in my life. And everything you've told me about her has made me want to know more about her. I mean, literally, the better part of this show, as far as I'm concerned, can be devoted just to your mother and the remarkable life that she led that we're aware of. And we can only make educated deductions about what we don't know. But where was she born?
My mom was born in Iowa, Muscatine, Iowa, the watermelon capital of the world.
Of course.
They're kind of known back in the day for their freshwater oyster buttons that they would cull these from the Mississippi River. And they kind of stopped, the industry stopped, because if you washed them enough times, they would dissolve into nothing. But back the way that we used to do things, and hand wash stuff, I guess that they were durable enough that they were a very popular item. So my mom kind of worked in the button factories and stuff for extra money when she was a little girl. My mom also, when she got a little bit older, she started working for the police department in Muscatine. I believe she was like 16, 17 years old. She was a young girl, but they needed somebody to walk the prisoners to the drunk tank on Friday and Saturday night. Yeah, and that was my mom's. Because of that, she was employed by law enforcement, and I think that maybe that paved the way for her later on for the officialdom, the sort of job.
It's a lot of responsibility to put on a teenage girl.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she would, talk about it. She said, well, it was actually really easy. The people were usually nice. They felt embarrassed. They'd be, Muscatine was kind of a small town, so everybody knew everybody. You kind of knew the town drunks. It's sort of like, oh, Harry's here again, and yeah, put him in the back, let him sleep it off. But that was my mom, and she moved to Southern California. I think I'm not sure exactly what led up to that. It might have been her brother, my Uncle Gene, who was an actor, of course, and so L.A. would be the place where you'd want to go to do that. He was acting actually in the Turnabout Theater. So my mom moved out here back in the 50s. And now we all knew this. This was not a secretive thing. My mom was one of Howard Hughes's 2 private secretaries.
Yeah.
Hughes had 2. He had 2 secretaries. And this was back in the mid-50s. He was already pretty much a recluse and a shut-in.
Hold that thought for a moment, because this is, to get from walking drunks from the drug tag in Iowa.
I know, it's quite a leap
one of
there.
Howard Hughes's 2 private secretaries. I mean, how did she possibly end up with that amazingly fascinating job?
She was very, very good at taking shorthand. This was back when stenographers wrote this language that just looked like squiggles and scribbles.
Well, court reporters still, they use the typed version.
Yes.
But yeah, shorthand is, it's kind of disappeared in this digital age of recording to a great degree, but some people use it, but very good. So because of that, or that was one of the factors that got her noticed. And
and I'm not sure exactly how she got her foot in the door there, but she said that the whole time she worked for him, she only saw him in person once, and it was a mistake. She wasn't supposed to. He would communicate with everybody over an intercom system, like Charlie's Angels. It's. I remember she mentioned something. We were watching Charlie's Angels, a show, and I was a teenager, and she said, well, that's kind of the way that we did it with
so
Hughes.
She worked in the hotel. He had a full floor that he lived on for many years, as I recall. Am I correct
believe
in that?
This was actually at the Sepulveda site of Hughes Aircraft.
Got it. Okay.
Now there was a parking garage, and what they would do, they had a common parking garage. At the end of the day, they would they would let everybody know. They had a bell or something to let them know that Hughes was leaving the building, like Elvis,
Yeah.
And he would go, and they would give them the all clear, and that's when they could get up and they could leave the building. And the way my mom told it, apparently this one day, this one evening, they were too quick on the bell, and they gave them the all clear. And she opened up the door. She had the office that was next to his in the Sepulveda office. Hers was right next to his. So she was close to the same exit. And apparently there was a long hallway that led out to the parking garage. And she opened the door, and there he was walking towards the exit, like Chaplin-esque. She said that it made her think of Charlie Chaplin, because he had the hat. He had to use a cane at that point. He had his little briefcase. And she said that he stopped there at the door, like he was horrified. Somebody was seeing him. Just stood there for a second. My mom didn't do anything. She just held her breath, I guess. And then he opened the door and left. And so she waited like a minute or so, and that's when she finally went. But that was the one time she saw him. But she used to communicate with him daily on the intercom system. So that was my mom's job. We knew that. I mean, her best friend was a woman named Ellen Severson. We called her Aunt Ellen, but she was adoptive aunt. She was my mom's friend. She worked for the Rand Corporation. And they were a satellite of Hughes up until, I think, 1963. They became their own entity. But Hughes, now you know that he made his fortune by developing a better drill bit. That's where his fortune came from. It wasn't aviation.
Yeah. That was his first fortune. Exactly.
Yes. The Rand Corporation is who we had. They worked with the Army Corps of Engineers. I've done quite a bit of study into this. You
also
can imagine.
Consulted, the Air Force consulted with them quite a bit, and they did a very intriguing report for the Air Force in, I think, 1961.
Yeah, I have a copy of that.
Yep,
yes.
Me too. And the potential impact on humanity of an extraterrestrial disclosure, for lack of a better term. And
they used to hand that out. It was a pamphlet. They would hand that out to new employees. Crazy, huh?
Did your mom work for Hughes until he died, or leave there at a certain
Mm-mm.
point and move into some of the more other intriguing employment opportunities that she had?
She worked for Hughes until 1958 when I was born.
Got it.
She said that when I was born, that's when she decided she was going to become a housewife at that
Mm-hmm.
point.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the way we started this, you're asking me how I first became interested in UFOs. Was that
Yes,
it?
exactly so.
So the first place that I ever even heard about the subject was from my mom. Around 1963. It was before we moved from Venice to where I grew up to my life, which was Thousand Oaks, California. It was in Ventura County. At that time, it was a little kind of a small town. It wasn't considered a city of Thousand Oaks yet, like it is now. But again, I remember being in the kitchen and my mom was talking with me, and she started talking about what she used to do before I was born, her job. And she said, well, Earl, that I worked for Howard Hughes and I worked for Hughes Aircraft. But there was a really strange thing about my job. And she talked about, and she just told the story. I remember, thankfully I have a really good memory. I think it horrified my mom later on when I started recounting this stuff back to her, because she thought that I forgot. She thought that I was safe at 5 years old, that she could break her her non-disclosure agreements with a little 5-year-old because he's just a baby. That's what she told later on. She said, how did you remember all that? You were just a baby. But I have a good memory. So my mom told me, that they sent me out once to the middle of the desert. There were a couple of security guys with me. And she said they took me out to this, it looked like a concrete shack. It was in the middle of nowhere. She said, the Great American Desert. And that's all she would tell me. She didn't go any further than that. That was as much information about the whereabouts. But she said that they went into the shack, it's like all locked up and, secure, this outpost, and that there was an elevator there. If they got into this elevator, she said it was like a regular old Otis elevator, like you'd see in a skyscraper. But of course, this didn't go up. It went straight down. That was the only direction that it could, go if you were on that street level, desert level floor. She said that she thought it maybe go down a floor or two, but it just kept on going, and it was going at quite a speed, and she felt butterflies in her stomach and was afraid. That was her quote unquote what she said. And later on she reiterated this story. Once she knew that I remembered it, there was no reason to just and so I heard it a couple more times. If she'd be in a good mood, or if she had maybe a martini in her or something, But the doors opened when it reached the bottom, and she said that there was a little city down there, a city under the desert, that they got around in golf carts, that they had, a cafe down there with little yellow umbrellas. And she got a kick out of that because you don't need an umbrella in a cave, is the way that she put it. But obviously, they're thinking about people's mental stability and well-being. Yes. I guess people were down there for a long time. She had a guy that could perm her hair. She said a barber shop, but he knew how to fix her hair. So I think it was mostly men working back in those days, but there were enough women where they had somebody that could do that for my mom.
Earl, when your mom first told you, or in subsequent tellings of this account, did she mention why these two security people? Was she given any reason, or why she was being taken there, or what the purpose of the visit was?
I know that she was there multiple times. I think that she literally worked down there for a period of time. Mm-hmm. And but she would never go. for years, it was very frustrating just because I would try, what were you guys doing down there, Mom? It was something I would ask her from time to time. And later on, especially once she started working for aerospace companies again, she really zipped up. She's talking about it. But a lot of stuff I was able just to gather just because it made, figure out because it made sense. Mom would talk about, like, she would see Werner von Braun on TV and say, "That's my friend Werner." She said he's a charming man. I have great respect for Werner. And as I got older, it's kind of like, well, wasn't he a Nazi, Mom?
Awkward
her
moment, but yes,
yeah,
a very handsome one.
I know. And her
old Operation Paperclip.
Exactly. And I think that they had a lot of those scientists. She mentioned Oberth at one point.
Holy moly!
I know,
The
those were like
German
important
rocketry.
guys. Yeah, they were essential to the space program. Mom was
Yes.
really proud of the Redstone program. She said that she had met John Glenn before and some of the astronauts. So whatever my mom was doing, it was deep underground. So they were hiding it from the public. It was top secret. And this, I later found out. I found out the hard way that I wasn't supposed to be talking about this. She didn't give me any rules when around this when she told me. I was just a little 5-year-old. I think that she thought it would go in one ear and out the other. That I'd be running off
in the middle.
It stuck. I kept bringing it up, and in fourth grade, I actually, what do your parents do for a living? Or what did your parents, interesting stuff about your parents. And I did a little show and tell in fourth grade, I think. I would have been 10 years old. And I talked about UFOs. We'll go into that a little bit later. But later on, my mom kind of blew the horn on UFOs as well, that it was a real thing.
So let's go back
to
that first time that your mother discusses with you the subject of UFOs. How old were you about?
That maybe 8 years old. It was late. It wasn't the same time she talked about the underground base.
Did she introduce the subject, or did you ask her about it?
That I don't remember. I know there was one incident. This would have been when the Look magazine article came out about Betty and Barney Hill. I know that my cousins and I were playing, Lost in Space in the backyard. So it had to be like around 1966 or 67, I think. And I remember my aunt brought that magazine over, and we heard my mom and my aunt arguing in the kitchen.
Really?
So as kids will do, we kind of ran to the door and we're, hiding there because we didn't want them to stop talking.
Sure.
But we wanted to hear what this, what could get them up in arms. So, and the conversation was that this can't be real, Betty. That was my Aunt Mary saying that this is like a bad science fiction story. I don't believe this. And my mom was interjecting, no, from what I know, Mary, I think that this might actually have been a real incident. I think this sounds like this was probably real and that this happened. And I remember at one point, this makes me laugh a little bit, that my aunt mentioned, they stuck a needle in her navel. And I had to turn to my older cousin and just like, what's a navel? He said belly button.
That's a perfect memory. Perfect.
Yeah, belly button, Earl. Now shush. Yeah. So we heard that whole conversation, and when I thought of life in outer space, I would think of My Favorite Martian or something like that. I had no conception of this weird, strange otherness that was out there, and that was broken that day. It was probably summertime, and
we could obviously chase this down, but the case broke internationally with John Fuller's publication on it. Of course, it happened in 1961. So I'm wondering whether or not the article in Look was that article. I'm forgetting right now whether it was late 65 or 66. But what we're saying here is at that time, your mother speaking to her sister, aunt.
It was her sister and
Right.
my aunt,
And who was taking, I guess, a generally
skeptical
acceptable view that no, there
Yeah.
are no aliens, and if there are, they don't abduct human beings. You're saying that your mother took UFO related abductions very seriously in the mid 60s.
Yes. Yeah, she did. I mean, now when, later on in the 70s, my mom, I think that she was terribly typecast as a housewife. I think her life was so interesting before, and that there was a little bit of, she could get pretty angry, because she was suddenly living, I guess, a provincial life, or however you would want to put it. And that she kind of missed her exciting the times that were before.
Did she? Is there a specific reason why she left having a career as well as being a mother at the same time, and just devoted herself to that more traditional, reality that so many of our moms took on one way or the other, or did their best to balance with work? Because it was something she obviously was challenged by and that she was good at. Do you know why she actually left when she did?
I think that was kind of expected of women back then, that if you had a child, you're expected to drop what it was that you were doing and take on the role of a housewife and a mother. And that's what she tried to do. And she was good. I mean, my mom, I remember early on, she could get pretty angry sometimes, because my dad originally was working in a company with his brother where they were building the first reusable heart-lung machine. My uncle was a famous cardiologist, Robert Anderson. He was actually the chancellor of Arizona University of Arizona's medical school, and my dad got in on that, and so my dad left pre-med. He was going to become a doctor, and my uncle kind of told him, well, there's no need for you to do this because you're going to be richer than you'll know what to do with, and you don't need to go and get your doctorate. And my dad had an aversion to blood, ironically. He did not like it. He was he was showing how to use the heart-lung machine during a procedure. He told about how a little stream of blood hit his hand and that he started feeling faint. And that was like a uh-oh for him. So, and I'll tell you the truth, I worked as a nurse and I had something similar happen and I got past it and it was never a problem before. I'm sure my dad would have been the same. But for whatever reason, he did listen to my uncle and he dropped everything. He dropped out of medical school and he became full-time with this company called Corco. Had an office in Los Angeles. Well, somebody invented a better heart-lung machine where it was totally replaceable. It was made out of plastic. They use that sort of thing even today now, and it made my dad's heart-lung machine obsolete almost overnight. I mean, now we got to go to Europe because of that machine. I mean, we went, he went to Spain and showed it to, he met Franco and did a presentation at the big hospital there. And we were in France. And that was what I think my mom thought that her life was going to be, kind of globetrotting with my dad.
Sure.
And suddenly my dad was unemployed without something to fall back on.
Oh, boy.
So he wound up going into landscaping, gardening. That was all that he knew. He did that with his father when he was young. And so I think that my mom was just kind of, life did not go the way that she was hoping it was going to go.
Indeed.
And I think
Earl, going back again to First, I wanted to ask you if you've ever shared with our friend and colleague Kathleen Martin that conversation, that argument between your mother and her sister.
Yes, she knows about that. I
figured.
told her I thought that was just kind of a beautiful synchronicity that
Yeah.
there, when I was like 8 or 9 years old, her family came up in such a pivotal moment for me. I remember feeling like the universe was falling down on me. I remember feeling the little beads of sweat and just feeling the willies for the first time.
And for viewers or listeners who are not aware of who Kathleen is, she is a very respected, internationally published ufologist, a specialist in the abduction phenomena, and the niece of Betty and Barney Hill. So again, you were privy to this conversation, this argument, but when did your mom actually first talk to you, as opposed to you surreptitiously catching the subject of UFOs?
This was back in 1977. And my mom, now I've done some research into deep underground military bases, and the people that worked in them early on all seem to have one thing in common. They got multiple cancers, as though they had been irradiated. Now, I'm not sure if that's because they were working off an atomic pile, like you would in a nuclear submarine. I mean, they were using something for energy, and I'm sure it was off the grid. So that's what I sort of think, but I don't know for sure. But she kept getting cancers, and she'd this was maybe the fourth time she had gotten, she'd had cancer, and she'd have to go in to have the checkups at the oncologist. So I went along with her for just support, because I love my mom.
Of course.
I was about 19 years old at the time, and she got a clean bill of health. Now, her doctor was Santa Monica, and her doctor was just in the same area as where the old Hughes building was, off of Sepulveda in that area. It's kind of close to where Otis College is, even, where I find myself, teaching my class in ufology. But so she got a clean bill of health, and we were kind of celebrating. I said, well, let's go. I was reading in Time magazine, and there's this new movie called Star Wars that had come out the day before. I said, let's do this movie. This sounds fun, Mom. This will be fun. We'll celebrate, get your mind, all that stuff. And so we watched Star Wars. At the end of the film, the curtains were closed, and there were only a couple in that theater because it wasn't lines around the building yet. That wasn't until the next week. Time magazine just came out. If you'd tried to go a week later, you would have been waiting, outside. But my mom, I was taken by surprise by how good the movie was, and she was there where her former office was, and what this had all opened up to her back in the 50s. So she started talking, and this was like full-on disclosure time, and it took me by surprise. You should know something about myself then. I was taking pre-seminary classes. I was planning on being like a Presbyterian minister, or I was going to. I wanted to people, and I had the Christian background. And so I didn't really have room in my world for UFOs and aliens at that time, even though the rest of my life I was obsessed with it. At that point, I was just kind of trying to, do this other thing.
Was this more the influence of your dad? And
Oh, okay. Yeah. My dad was, dad was religious, and that was around me too.
Continue on.
So, but Mom said, wow, son, you have no idea that movie, Star Wars. She said, it's so close to the truth. She said, it's this stuff is realer than you will ever know. She said that a couple of times during the conversation.
My gosh.
She said the entities, or she didn't use the word entities. I think she said aliens, or, aliens and the spaceships and just the whole thing, the other planets and intelligence in the universe. It is a real thing. Our government knows about it. They've known about it for quite a while, son, but they're never going to tell the people. She said, you know why? Because you have to remember with the War of the Worlds radio broadcast, people were, jumping out of windows and stuff, and they're just afraid of how the population would react. So they're never going to tell them. She said, but you know what, son, it's realer than you'll ever know, that film. Star Wars is not far-fetched. And she went on. I mean, some of it, I was almost like, la, 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 sticking my fingers in my ears because I didn't want to hear it. It was confusing what I was doing at the time, which is my studies into the New Testament and stuff.
Did she at all discuss, whether you wanted to hear it or not, how she felt so certain about this, how she knew this, or that didn't come up?
That didn't come up, but it was kind of the elephant in the room. I knew that my mom had worked for Hughes and that she'd had these security clearances. And by that time, she was working in aerospace again. She wound up going back to work about 1973, 74. And she was working, she opened an employment office. It was Manpower is who she was working for. But it was it wasn't a front because she was getting people out to regular plain old jobs. But many of her accounts were most of them, lion's share, were aerospace companies. Rockwell, Aerojet, Rocketdyne, Burroughs was one, early computer stuff.
Yes.
What were some of the other accounts? Raytheon. It was just like Northrop. Northrop. She got one friend of mine who was kind of a walking computer, a job out at Northrop to fix their mainframe. And that's a whole other story. He was gone for like a month, came home with a pile of cash. And I think that he was working in a deep underground facility up in Tehachapi, they call the Anthill. Apparently their mainframe computer went down and they couldn't, it was one number that screwed everything up. And this kid was a year older than me. So I guess he was maybe 20 years old, maybe a little younger than that at the time. I think he was younger than that, kind of just out of high school, but he had this gift. His mom was my math teacher, the one that made me sit in the rain because I didn't do my homework, right? But my mom got him out there and he was gone. I mean, the mom was calling me. It was like back in school, It's like, where is my son? Where did your mom send my son? He hasn't called me. It's been a month. I'm worried, But he came back. He had fixed their mainframe computer. He had I think he stole it, had like the computer readout sheet with this one number circled in a orange grease pencil. Said that's what stopped Northrop. It stopped everything. And I was able to fix it, but it was this one stupid number, clogged the whole thing up. So that's the kind of stuff my mom did. She got people out to special jobs. And Lockheed Skunk Works was her main account, by the way.
Really?
The bench was at Lockheed at the time. So there you go.
You, one of the reasons that you went into the area of specialty you did in our world of UFO studies, which is high strangeness cases and people who have had abduction related experiences. Were you conscious, let me put it this way, when were you consciously aware for the first time that you may have had these kinds of experiences?
I didn't really have a UFO experience or an experience with beings until I joined MUFON. I mean, it was like 7 years ago. Before that, I was really, really interested in it. I might have had a sighting when I was a kid, when I was at school. It got me in trouble because I pointed this thing out in the sky. Of course, the kids they just wanted to laugh at me. I mean, I think that's why the teacher called the teacher parent conference with my mom. And when I was in 4th grade, I mean, my mom actually came to school and picked me up. um, because and my mom in the car, I remember she said, son, I mean, she was very calm about it. She wasn't angry. But she said, Earl, it's not your fault. I never told you this. I was hoping that you would just forget it, but you obviously didn't. But you can't ever talk about this, about the city under the desert or UFOs and stuff. You'll get your mom into trouble. She said, your mom could go to prison for this. And I had to tell your teacher that you had a good imagination. So I'm so sorry, son. I know that that's not true, but you can't talk about it. Your mom would be put away.
This is a very adult moment for a child. And wrapping your head around the National Security Act of 1947 and the understanding that your mother knew very secret things about subjects that other people laughed about and didn't think were serious. Do you remember how you reacted to that internally, what your reflections were on it?
Sure. It was pretty eye-opening. I mean, it was just my mom, up to then. And I never thought of it as being something secret or something that the government would be hiding. I mean, we don't take our parents all that seriously unless we're in trouble or something, when we're kids. It's just, I mean, you remember how it was. Oh, it's just my mom. It's just my dad. I mean, listening to Sinatra in there. And so it was pretty shocking to me, the drive home. But the thing that I do remember is how sweet my mom was about it. She could have, and I realized there as well that, I mean, I thought I was in trouble. I mean, you don't have a parent-teacher conference suddenly unless it's parent-teacher conference season, unless you've done something really bad. And so that was how it kind of hit me.
So now, let's say you are in your early 20s. Have you zoned in on what you should be as an adult for your career? Or are you taking general studies, or where did you stand in the world of formal education?
I'd kind of given up on being a minister, after going through a divorce and stuff like that. No, life and its normal stuff kind of caught up with me. And but I worked as a nurse for many years. I started off a wheelchair pusher at a local hospital, but I liked doing that, and I liked the contact with people and stuff. It was a person job.
Let me jump in for a moment and just say, as a personal observation about you, since we've been friends, one of the things I really admire and find really quite inspiring about you in a quiet way is going from thinking about following in your dad's philosophy and being a man of the cloth, to be of service, to going to study nursing. And I have a tremendous admiration and respect for nurses. My sister Ann recently retired, career as a registered nurse practitioner, and I couldn't be prouder of her. But to become a nurse, which at times is a very challenging job, to be of service, to going to the commitment that you have to MUFON and the specific one-to-one aspect of it and working with people who have been through things to be of service. That's a lot of who you are, and it's something I love about you. It's really inspiring.
Thank you. I mean, that is true. I seem to pick, jobs and things where I can help people. I'm not sure where that originally came from, but it seems to be a part of me. So, and I love that about working with MUFON's ERT. When I had my experience, I went to you. I mean, you were like the only, you and eventually Kathleen, once I knew her, I talked with her. But most of the people I knew were kind of nuts and bolts ufologists, and they didn't really understand the experience or phenomenon. But when you experience it and it becomes, something real to you, it's a catalyst. It's a life changer. It pulls the rug out from under you.
It certainly does. It certainly does.
Yeah.
And we have actually blown through our first hour. And
Wow.
Exactly. A missing time experience of sorts.
At least.
This is Peter Robbins. The show is Meanwhile Here on Earth. My guest is Earl Grey Anderson, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Don't touch that dial, as they used to say in the old analog days.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Are we alone in the universe? The most important question facing humanity is on the verge of being settled once and for all. The Mutual UFO Network has been at the forefront of this journey for nearly 50 years. Our members worldwide are dedicated to the research, documentation, and awareness that will shape the future of humanity. Won't you join us?
Discover the Observation Deck, a one-of-a-kind virtual event platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus. There's so many areas and activities to choose from. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, an expo hall, a nightclub, and even a beach. So come attend a conference, take a class, or hear a lecture on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Go to theobservationdk.com.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
And we are back on Meanwhile Here on Earth with my special guest tonight, Earl Grey Anderson. This show is one of many that I've done on this broadcast network, one of many I hope to do in the future. But I am one of many hosts of many fascinating shows. And KGRA has hundreds, if not thousands, countless fascinating shows in their archive. And for a very modest amount every month or year, you can access them all. So please consider subscribing. And if you use my first name as your subscription code, that's PETER, when you subscribe by the month of the year, you get a full 30% discount. And that concludes the mercantile part of this show. back to Earl Gray Anderson. Earl, there was a period that you were working as a nurse, and your interest in the subject of UFOs was growing. Was there something other than, some of the things that passed between you and your mom that was causing you to have more interest? Were you actually starting to read books and watch documentaries and actually become involved leading up to your becoming a member of the Mutual UFO Network?
I read my first UFO books. I read one of Kehoe's books.
Great.
Way back when, back in fourth grade, actually. When I really started, I think that was when I started realizing way back then that my mom was involved in something extraordinary. And that was one of the well, I mean, it was just very telling. After they had this, a parent-teacher conference, they took the UFO books out of the school library.
Oh, my goodness.
I guess that they decided it was a bad influence on them.
How interesting.
So those were the first UFO books. I think that it was, I think that I read... if I'm not mistaken, that there might have been one of Van Tassel's contactee books there.
Sure.
They had the Kehoe book that I was very interested in. And I think that they had Flying Saucers Serious Business was
Frank
one
Edwards.
of them. Yeah, Frank's book, which is wonderful, is still, a go-to. I mean, that is a book that is
major
just
60s bestseller as well.
Yeah, and I mean, it's still as relevant now, if it's more relevant now than it was when it came out. Nothing in there has been disproven, and in fact, the contrary. But I think that everything with a teacher and stuff like that, it scared me enough that for some years I quelled it down, and I just, right there I stopped because, I was being teased at school, you see any flying saucers, Earl? I mean, it all kind of stemmed from this talk I gave. I mean, a 10, 15-minute talk max that wound up, I was teased and stuff. And I really wasn't that into it. It just, it was my mom and it was an interest. And, but I dropped it for years. And later on, as I got older, it came back to me and the import of it hit me. And I started trying to get my mom to talk more. And she usually wouldn't. At one point, I think I was maybe, say, 23, 24 years old or so. I just got frustrated because she wouldn't talk about what they were doing down there. And I remember I was visiting my parents' house, and I just asked my mom point blank, what were you guys doing under the desert? And it seems to me that just came out, with no prelude or warning. And, just tell me something, Mom, what were you guys working on? Were you working with aliens? Were you working with a nuclear stuff? What was it? And she looked frustrated and she walked away, and then she got halfway across the hallway and turned around and she came back. And I remember, I mean, it's such a sensorial memory. I remember click, click, click. I remember her walking on the carpet, and then she got to the tile. It was like click, click, click up to the chair. And she looked at me and she said, all right, I'll tell you one more thing. She said, you were down there. And I looked at her like, what? Like, well, jaw drop. What do you mean I was down there? I wasn't born yet. She said, that's right. She said, but you were in my tummy. I was working there while I was pregnant with you, son. So technically you've been down in the little city under the desert. that definitely hit home. And I thought about that a lot. Not that I think they did anything to me down there, but that, you were there. I was there, apparently, in utero, but there nonetheless. But later on, I tried to get her to talk more after the Star Wars thing. I took her to see E.T. and all she would say after she saw E.T. didn't say anything after Close Encounters. And you'd think that she would have really got going with that one, but no, not a word.
Or absolutely the opposite.
Yeah, she's just zip. Not a word. Didn't even say she liked the movie. But I took her and my dad to see E.T. and then I was saying, well, what did you think of that movie, Mom? What, and I'm just like all ears. I'm just thinking I'll hear something here. And she said, son, it was a cute movie, but I don't think they're all that nice.
That's it. That's very interesting as well.
Yeah. So, I would get little bits and pieces and years went by and now, into when I, towards the end of my mom's life, she got cancer again. And the last time it took her life, she'd had a double mastectomy. And what did she get? Breast cancer is what they wrote on her death certificate.
Oh my God.
It's like how you get breast cancer when you don't have breasts anymore. I don't know, but I guess it was in the bone there. But my mom had the hospital bed in her living room, and she's that was where she was comfortable, and she had the phone there, and still talking to aerospace friends, and she had friends in the movie industry. She knew a couple of one of the actors, the sister from Gone with the Wind, she recently passed away, but that was Mom's friend. I forget the name. You know the name.
The actress, you mean?
Yeah, Anne Rutherford. That was
okay.
Yeah, Mom was friends with Anne, and she would talk with her sometimes on the phone.
Got it. But
I decided that my mom, the reason why she was dying was because of her work for the government, that they weren't protecting her. And I had a very serious conversation. I said, I want to go and I want to get a lawyer and I want to blow this whole thing out of the water. My mom would take a trip to Europe every single year. That was like her fun, mad money. And I think that's, what she made through her headhunter
employment
work.
Business. Yeah.
She that's how she did that. I said, well, a trip to England every year is nice, but you're dying, Mom. It's not worth your life, and we should go after these people. They shouldn't get away with this, and they should have to account for themselves. And this was just like a week or two before my mom passed away. And she looked at me and she told me that, son, I knew that there were risks in this when I went into it. And it was just like if somebody had joined the military. I was doing this for my country. I would do it again without hesitation, with the same consequences, and I would never sue my country. Son, I would never sue my country. And that was that. That was that. And she was gone, like a week or two after that.
Oh my gosh.
But this, what she told me when I was a kid, that it's realer than you will ever know, kept coming back to me. It just kept on replaying in my head. And I wanted to prove that was wrong, that I could know as much as she did. And I wanted to know. And thus began my journey. It's almost like when my mom passed away, I really started digging into this. I kind of did a little bit while she was still here, but she wasn't answering questions. I mean, I asked her, have you ever heard of Bob Lazar? She said, what, Bob Lazar? No, I never heard of him, And I would do stuff like, bring names up in cases. And she
Had she ever heard of, did you ever ask her about Dr. J. Allen Hynek?
I didn't ask her about Hynek. I didn't. I wish I had known more back then. But my knowledge of the phenomenon at that point was kind of not all, and I'll tell you, I mean, I felt almost embarrassed by it because my favorite authors were people like, Carl Sagan, Carl Sagan, Arthur C. Clarke, Asimov, and all those guys said that UFOs were an embarrassment, that it wasn't real.
That's right.
Now I find out through my friend Paul Hynek that his father and Arthur C. Clarke had a very a really good pen pal relationship, and I've seen a letter that Arthur Clarke wrote to J. Allen Hynek that said, that you're doing very, very good science. And I think that some of these things that you are seeing are not human made, and they're not swamp gas, that they're extraterrestrial. But in the same letter, he said, I can't ever say this in public.
I was going to say,
I'll never be invited to another moonshot again. Yeah. But that was
Earl,
meaningful.
At a certain point, you had an experience. Well, at a certain point, you were interested enough to either learn about or you already knew about, but to join as a regular member of MUFON. And sometime after that, your life changed.
Yes.
You had an experience, an event in your life that caused you to reach out to a total stranger who is sitting right here in this room and is talking to you right now. And that takes a lot. I mean, you've got to be, I'm not going to use the word desperate, but how did you seek me out? And can you share with us the events that brought you and I into contact for the first time?
Sure, I can, Peter. Well, we met through our mutual friend, Jeff Krause, who was my state director at MUFON. Still one of my dearest friends. I love Jeff, and happy birthday, Jeff, tomorrow.
Is it today? Tomorrow. Okay.
I think it's on the 3rd, actually, so it's 2 days
as long as I didn't miss it.
I know, me too. But Jeff was more of a nuts and bolts ufologist, and God bless him. I mean, I learned everything that I kind of know about UFOs and how to do this thing through Jeff. But he didn't. His understanding of the abduction phenomenon was a little. It was. I mean, he knows a lot more now.
It wasn't a specialty.
It is his own little experience too, so he knows that it's stranger we ever thought it was. But this was almost 8 years ago. It was a while ago. But Jeff had introduced us on Facebook, and I knew I had read Intruders, and I knew that you were there for all these, hypnotic regressions, and that you were working elbow to elbow with Bud Hopkins, same office, and I respected you. I knew, and so you were who I kind of chose to go to. I didn't really have any place to go to. I mean, it was. We'll talk a little bit about my experience in a bit, but when it happened, I had no idea that it was going to be like it was. It was not it was a scary experience. It was scary in the moment. Still is, if I look back at it. It's, it was not Valiant Thor, or I didn't get like a little UFO tour of the universe like I was naively hoping I was. But I started doing like a CE5 thing. I had heard about that, and I had meditated when I was younger. I started sending that thought out there. I want to meet you. I want to meet extraterrestrials. If you want to abduct me, go ahead. You can have my DNA. It's worth it to me because I want to see a spacecraft. I want to meet you, and so that's my bargain. And I literally sent that out there with no address. It could have gone to anybody. It could have gone to, Valiant Thor, or it could have gone to Satan or whoever. I had no address on it, and so I guess I should just go into what happened. But that's why I got a hold of you. I didn't know who to contact. Jeff was not familiar with this. All he knew was his new field investigator, who he really liked, and he liked the way that I did this. And I was skeptical when I needed to be skeptical, but I was open-minded when I needed to be open-minded. But suddenly this guy is telling him that I had a face-to-face encounter with aliens. And that was the last thing that Jeff wanted to hear. It would be the last thing I would want to hear from a new field investigator. I wouldn't want to hear that, Okay. It's a ball of snakes and a can of worms, But do you want me to just go on with what
Talk
happened?
About what happened?
Okay. Well, I did that for maybe a week or two. And one night I remember I was closing a case. I remember what the case was. It was somebody had put in a UFO report, and it was a gold Mylar party balloon. It was way up in the atmosphere. You'd zoom in on it, and it was like, oh, I can get one of these over at Amazon, you know? And so I was kind of feeling my oats. I was feeling like, I do this really good. I could tell that was a Mylar balloon. Not so good, Earl. That's pretty obvious, you know, in retrospect. But, you know, anyway.
You've got to chase these things down.
What was that?
You've got to chase these things down and resolve them.
Yeah,
Often,
of course. Yeah.
the results are not romantic or exotic. They're
sometimes they are. Usually they're not. Usually, like Dr. Hynek said, 90 to 95% of your UFO reports are prosaic objects. It's a planet, sure. A spacecraft, satellite or balloon or what have you. Drones is what we see a lot. And in SpaceX, we see a lot of now. But anyway, I went up to bed, and my wife was already asleep. We were living in Burbank, not a rural area. We were along, if anybody knows the area, the Chandler Bike Path. It's a very busy area. It's the city. So not like it's in the middle of nowhere. I went upstairs and I'm getting ready to fall asleep, but I was wide awake still. I was shoving pillows behind my back because I like to sit kind of in a semi-recumbent position. And weird things started happening with the light in our room. At first, I had turned the lights out in our room, first of all. So it was dark in there. They were already out. I didn't have to turn anything off. Lisa was asleep. But it started.
Stayed asleep.
Yeah, she stayed asleep. She didn't wake up until, well, I'll tell you when she did. But the room started getting brighter, and there was no source for the light. And I'm looking around, and then I stopped looking around because I suddenly feel very peaceful. I felt so contented and so peaceful. And we normally had a cricket problem in the rafters. You couldn't hear any crickets, couldn't hear any street noise. It was like the Get Smart with the cone of silence is pretty much what it was like. It was unnaturally quiet. I had one experiencer explain it to me recently like it's the calm before the earthquake. That's kind of a thing. Before an earthquake will start, it gets very, very quiet. Dogs won't be barking, and then everything shakes. So nothing started shaking here. What happened was I realized that I couldn't move my arms or my legs. I could move my eyes. I was still peaceful, though. I mean, that's the weirdness.
Isn't that interesting? And isn't that common?
Yeah. So I noticed we had the TV set was right in front of my side of the bed. It was a TV, and then the bathroom and the closet over here. And our neighbor's house was maybe 10, 12 feet away from ours. No room to park a spaceship there, by the way. All right.
Sideways.
Yeah, no, not, well, yeah, maybe dimensionally sideways, flatland style, right? So, but I noticed like this point of light, and it grew brighter, and the room was getting brighter. But it seemed like somebody was pouring the light into our room. It was not, it didn't have a source. It didn't work like photons. You turn on a light and it's the speed of light. It's 186 miles a second. So it seems instantaneous. You don't see the light flowing like a liquid and hitting the wall. This was different. It was just like very slow and seemed almost like a solid in a way. Peaceful as all get out, and then I had no reason to be because it didn't make any sense what was going on. I noticed the spinning that was in front of me. It was in the wall. The closest example I can give you would be like if you pour cream into a cup of coffee, it seemed to spread out towards the sides, and it was spinning in a clockwise fashion. and since then, I think of Scooby-Doo cartoons as a blah, 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 but there was no Scooby-Doo music. But, in retrospect, if I were making fun of it, that's what I would have added.
Sure.
The thing opened up, it irised from the middle out to the periphery of this opening in the wall. You could see light coming from a distance. So this was coming from a distance. There was a figure that was standing to my right that was tall. I didn't see hair on it. It was backlit at this point. So you really couldn't see the features. Could not see any features. I didn't see, it looked like a bald pate. It was maybe 5 foot tall. It wasn't necessarily short. That was standing there almost like a guard, not moving, just standing there. And I saw these 4 figures that came up. It was like they were drawn to me. They didn't walk up. It was like they just were drawn to me somehow. Like if there was a platform under them or they were pulled up somehow. I don't know how that works or how that worked. I don't know if they floated or what, but here they were. There was 2 on this side, and my wife was right next to me, but there were 2 that were down by her feet, by the foot of the bed, and there were 2 on this side that were on my side of the bed.
And you're still in
I was cogent. I was awake, and I saw everything. I experienced everything. They were not communicating with me. It was the little 4 foot tall, diminutive gray guys. Their skin felt like dolphin flesh. I mean, I felt their fingers when they were.
You actually reached out?
No, they were like touching me and stuff.
Got it. Oh, right, because you couldn't move.
They put tubes on me. I remember I told you this when this happened, and you were like, I think that it threw you because it was so weird. But they put tubes like on my chest, up above, like right here, like clavicle, lower than the clavicle, but right here. And I felt like they were taking blood or energy. I was afraid. This is the first time where I was screaming in my mind because I was not getting any communication back from these guys. They were not communicating back.
And you were not able to form words or sounds at this point?
No, I couldn't move my mouth or my vocal cords. I could move my eyes, and that's all I could move, which was horrifying because I took care of quadriplegics for almost 40 years, and that's the only time I've ever been one myself. Oh. I never want to be one again.
Yes.
But I couldn't do anything about it. And the fears that I had was because they're not communicating with me, maybe they are going to harm me, is what I was thinking. Because I remember reading, people would get a calming message or something, and I didn't get one of those. And I was thinking, well, maybe they're going to take all of my blood. They're going to exsanguinate me, and I'll be like those cows they find along the road, So I was really scared. Glad that I went to the bathroom before I went to bed, or it probably would have been a mess. But it took about 10, 15 minutes. They were efficient. They worked like a school team. It was like no effort was wasted. It seemed like the next person knew what he was going to do, the 4 of them.
Being a nurse and working in tandem in procedures, this had to have a slightly familiar sensibility.
I understood what was going on.
Yeah.
They were working together as a team.
Yeah.
Not a word was passed between them, but, we know that they apparently have telepathic communication with each other. They finished up what they were doing, and I remember the tubes were released by themselves. Like they came off, and they just rolled back through from where they came from the wall. This is a weird thing, I couldn't see the inside of a spaceship. I see, controls or computer banks or anything. It was pretty.
You never
boring.
left your room. You never left your bed.
No, I never let. They did a house call, and I could just see distance and light, and these guys with the eyes that you couldn't stop looking at. And I'll tell you, when you look in their eyes, you can't stop looking at them. You're held. You're held by them. They never stopped looking at me. When they finished up, they left the same way that they came in. They kept looking at me, and I couldn't move. The guy at the door, or at the periphery of this opening, he never moved. He might as well have been a wax dummy. Maybe he was. I don't know. He didn't do anything. He stood there and stood there. And the wall closed back up the same way it opened. It just irised back in. And to the best of my recollection, now time gets weird and foggy with this stuff. It was the Oz effect is what I was experiencing. John Mack talked about it a lot in his books. And now that I'm familiar with this phenomena, I see it time and time again from case to case. Even in Close Encounters with a Craft, time will get very weird, and people will say, well, I don't know if it was 5 minutes or an hour. And that's like standing there looking at a craft close up. So I think that they create this space where their physics works and ours is an afterthought. And so when they left, it took me a while to be able to move. The room was still light in it, but by the time the room was perfectly dark, I could move, and I started screaming and yelling. And this woke up Lisa, and she was not happy.
What
Lisa,
did you tell her? What could you tell her?
I was yelling about aliens, that aliens took me, and that aliens got me. And she was not happy. She was like, oh my God, you've joined this crazy UFO group, and is this what I have to look forward to in the future, etc.
How did that resonate over the next days and weeks? Because that can tear into a relationship. Obviously, she's your wife. She knew of the genesis of your interest, joining this organization. And then you're telling me this happened while I was sleeping and I missed it all. And over the years, decades,
she wouldn't have wanted to have seen that anyway.
It can cause a lot of stress.
I went into a fetal thing, and I had PTSD more or less. I was just shocked. I was just horror. I was horrified. I was hoping to meet Space Brothers. I was that naive. I was hoping, I offer myself as a I offered myself as an abductee, and I got what I asked for, but I wasn't thinking about
you
what I was
didn't get abducted.
For.
You got visited.
Yeah, I got visited, but the same kind of stuff. They didn't probe me, thank God. Poor Whitley. But now here's the way that it worked out. I felt embarrassed, and I didn't bring it up. Okay, I didn't bring it up again, and I don't think she brought it up. I think she was just mad. She was PO'd at me.
Sure.
The 2 nights later, and this is, I'm sad that my wife may have had to experience something like this, but I'm thankful that she knows I'm not insane, that there's something to ufology. My wife was the one that was shaking me awake. She shook me, and I was out I was out. And she shook me until I woke up. It was maybe 3 in the morning. She said, our room was filled with light again. The same thing. It was quiet in there, no crickets, light in the room. But my wife was pacing next to the bed and going, oh my God, Earl, you need to tell your little friends they need to leave us the she used that word, alone. Because I have insomnia. I don't need this. I didn't ask for this. And this is your thing. And what the hell? And tell your little friends to leave. And my little friends, And so she knows it's a real thing.
Yeah.
2 nights after that, we both woke up to the room flooded with light. We could both move. We both went to the window. This time it was coming from over our house. It was also... Our room again was lit from within somehow. and it felt peaceful again. That's the weird thing, if they could bottle that, you could sell that in your corner liquor store for, it just felt so peaceful, and that was the way it was the third night. But there was something over the house, perfectly silent. But if it was a police helicopter, you would have heard the rotors and stuff.
How do you know there was something over the house?
Because there was a light shining down on our house. It was very, very bright. And we both got like this telepathic message, but it was a misleading one. We looked at each other and we laughed. We said that was not the neighbor's porch light, because we both had it was like a communication to us. Oh, don't worry, it's just neighbor's light. Oh, we're looking at the neighbor's house and the porch light is pointed down. It's not pointed at our window, and this was coming from over the house. So that was our weird week. And that's what I call it, is our weird week.
I would
changed
say
my life
in capital wiggly letters with lines rating off of them like a Robert Crumb cartoon or something. I think for some people, once you wrap your head around even the possibility that such things actually happen, there's often it is accompanied by a sense of awe, and that if they're so advanced, they must be infallible. Well, no, anything but. And there is a quirky, informal history of people returned with the wrong garment that they were wearing, in a different room. Again, for me, so much of this is deeply emotional. And it has shattered certain lives and certainly set new courses for others. It has become a PTSD aspect of the lives of certain people. But in the years I worked with Bud, every once in a while, something would happen that would just naturally break the tension, because it was so counterintuitive or idiotic or just illogical or absurd. And that message of it's the neighbor's porch light.
I know.
No, it's not the neighbor's fucking porch light. It's this huge blast of light coming. I know. Bud had been working with a young woman, and this was, I think, several years in. The case was very detailed, a great deal of physical evidence supporting witness testimony, other family members involved. And once again, she wakes up with an experience similar to yours. The room is filling with light. There are several beings. This is not unfamiliar to her. There's no panic because, they control the dials basically emotionally. And she thought to them, "Who are you?" And the message she got back clear as a bell was, "We're your parents." Now, she may have been in an altered state, but she wasn't stupid. And she said, "No, you are not my parents." And everything is quiet in her head for a moment or two. And then coming back in very, matter-of-fact inflection, "We're your parents' best friends." It was early enough in the 80s when this happened that we both cracked up remembering the classic Saturday Night Live bit Land Shark.
Land Shark. I was just going to quote
Western
that.
Union, Candygram. But no, for your parents' best friend.
Oh my God.
I think in life, we need natural humor to resolve tension sometimes, and it's often there waiting for us. But you come out of this experience, and you are a member of the largest UFO organization in the world. You've got your state director, who is not thrilled that he has this investigator who believes that he's had this, deeply memorable contact experience. Where did you go from there after we spoke?
I read more. I did just, I think, through synchronicity, I met a few other people that had gone through similar stuff, but I actually had a case with a guy who he had been abducted with his whole family from area near China Lake, and I spent a long time talking with him and with family members and you know, and this was the first case where it was I closed it as an unknown. I think it might have been my first unknown for MUFON. Jeff was very, very picky about what we would call an unknown. If you didn't have a second witness, or there had to be something that said it, you know, and I agree. You know, I'm like that too, to a certain extent. But this case was just, it had affected the whole family's lives. The wife became hyper religious and wound up divorcing this guy, which kind of broke his heart, because he said it was ETs and she wanted to blame it on the devil. You know, no, right, the devil is tricking us. And so that was somebody who, ironically, I wound up getting comfort from talking with one of the people I was comforting. You know, I was, and I just knew by instinct somehow when I got his case that I wasn't going to, you know, because there, you know, some people have this idea of, well, if you have something that wild and far-fetched, you should, you know, get a couple of, you know, bright lights and treat it like a, you know, inquisition or something. And it's like, no, this guy has PTSD. He's lost all, you know, his family. He's lost so much. He's back on his feet now, but, you know, so that I think really helped. And that led me to Kathleen Marden, because my state director, Jeff, decided, he said, you know, this should go to the ERT. I'm like, what's ERT? I didn't know what the ERT was. It's like belly. What's a navel, you know? What's the ERT? And he told me about this subgroup in MUFON. That
again, that's Experiencer Research Resource Team.
At that time, it was the Experiencer Research Team. Now it's the Experiencer Resource Team. Mm-hmm. And I'm very, very proud to be part of it, because we're kind of the humanitarian. We work like social workers for.
You've got some remarkable members there. It was an honor to sit in on your sessions.
Yes. We truly do. I mean, so many doctors, psychologists, philosophers, and just the IQ level of that group is just through the roof. But I went and I talked with Kathleen Marden, and it was maybe, you know, no, I kept a lot of this to myself about my own experience. The only people I would tell about were new field investigators. I felt like, well, I owe it to them. I need to give them that little caveat that I became a field investigator and this happened, you know? So I just, you know, it'd be sort of like, be careful. If you poke at the phenomenon, it may poke back. It's interactive. And this is what happened to me. Yeah. And that was it. That was the only people I would talk to about it. I you know, it was embarrassing in a way. And people kind of look at you funny, you know? And then some still do, but anyway, I met Kathleen through this, and she wanted to get together and meet at Alien Con about 4 years ago. She was in town here for that, and so I met with her at Alien Con, and we talked over lunch. And I thought that we were just talking about my experience, and maybe she could, you know, figure out, you know, what it was about. And she felt like they were renegade grays, that they, you know, were working on their own, that most ETs do have rules that they have to abide by and such, but there are, you know, carpetbaggers and DNA thieves out there, and that these were part of that. And it was very helpful. And then after we finished talking, she asked me, would you like to join the Experiencer Resource Team? And little did I know I was being interviewed for the job. I didn't know it was a job interview. I just knew we were, you know, palling around and a little bit, and I was telling her, you know, what happened to me. So that kind of opened up the world to me when I joined the ERT. I started, suddenly I was in this group of people that absolutely, it's the tip of the spear as far as experience or research goes.
That's right.
They've done work with the free group, Edgar Mitchell's old group. We've done blind studies with, the experiencer phenomena in tandem with them. And it opened my life up. I mean, I'm friends and colleagues with my heroes, more or less.
Earl,
who would have guessed?
Let's take a few minutes and turn our attention to some of the images that you sent. And I'd like to begin with an article that was done, of course, with your assistant by the aforementioned Jeff Krause, who is again, former state director of California.
Happy birthday, Jeff.
Almost
happy birthday.
So it's a wonderful picture of your mother, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that was for UFO Truth magazine, a UK publication.
Yes.
And that was about 7 years ago, I think, that it was published.
Great picture of Hughes there.
Yeah. The spruce goose. That's Mom and myself there, right about around that time of when she did her little first disclosure number about the working in the dump.
Something you mentioned will stick in my mind, which is a fourth grader comes forward and essentially does a book report on a classic UFO book and says some things that upset some of the adults. There's a student, there's a parent-teacher meeting, and it results in all of the UFO books in that school library being removed.
They were gone.
A very interesting footnote to the history of the way this has been dealt with. And von Braun, her friend von Braun, oh my gosh.
Mom said he was a charming man. They said that we built the rockets correctly, but we sent them to the wrong planet. How about that? That was a quote she gave me. Yeah.
There you are.
All the MUFON boy there with my little Cloisonne MUFON badge there. There you go.
Yep. Another Earl Grey.
That is the guy who got the Earl Grey name, 1989. That is your acoustic rock and roller there. The little Jim Morrison influence, but hopefully
I was going to say
too
most
much.
Certainly.
There you go. Uncle Earl wants you.
Okay.
That's the fudge. My mom was asked by Howard Hughes to get the See's candy fudge recipe, and that price was no problem. And she wrote it down after she got it for him. I'm not sure how much they paid for it, but he didn't want to get it. He didn't want to eat it out of the See's box. He wanted his people to cook it for him where it would be germ-free, and there you go.
Good gosh. What
a trip, huh?
Little personal note on Hughes, yes.
That's out by Burbank where I used to live. Cartoon Network had a little deli that they like to go to, and the artists would come and draw on the walls, and so there's some of their work. Yeah, it's all the walls are like. It's really cool. That's one of my art pieces. That's one of my visitors.
I have never interfaced, but I have certainly seen this face recreated for me or for Bud or other investigators in so many countries, from so many people, from so many socioeconomic and other kinds of backgrounds. This is
They do blink, by the way. I watched them blink their eyes when they were looking at me. So they're big eyelids. That's Denise Marcel with the Piper Gray CD there. I'd given her a copy of one of the CDs that my little acoustic duo Piper Gray put out.
Neat.
And so she sent me that picture from the UFO Watchtower in Colorado. just giving me a little shout out on Facebook,
Very
and that
cool.
was sweet of her.
Yeah.
That is
Okay.
where I met Paul Hynek. I was invited to the Project Blue Book premiere party
I remember that.
as a mucky muck for MUFON. So we got to go, Lisa and I got to go to that, and that's where I met Paul, and he became a fast friend and has been a dear
Well,
friend
I can
ever
understand
since.
why. Meeting him was certainly one of the high points of the conference for me last month. And one of those people that you meet, it's like, oh, it's you. You feel like you've known them for a long time in many ways.
Yes. That's the same
jeez.
party. They had their abduction photo booth. So
Gotta laugh.
yeah, you gotta be able to laugh at it.
It's
If
true.
you didn't, I'd go nuts.
Oh, yeah.
I'm told so many people
Absolutely.
go
And
crazy over this
laughing
stuff.
in the
and
face of anxiety and fear and
yeah,
consternation is good medicine.
you have to be able to laugh at it, kids. That's on. They had this whole house set up for this premiere party with a room set up like the set. Even though they filmed it on a studio set, they recreated it in this mansion in Hollywood, and so that's in the Project Blue Book, the Hynek office space that they had put together in this house. It's quite elaborate. It was quite an amazing party.
Yeah, I expect.
And that's actually a blank folder there, Peter, but I'm looking all studious because
great prop
it was
cover.
going to be a good picture, right?
Absolutely, man.
So there you go. There, I'm laughing a little bit more at it. That was
great
their bulletin board. Yeah. Fun stuff, huh? That is Paul Hynek's cousin. Very nice gal. A lot of the family were there. I met his brother Joel as well.
Yes.
And I forget what we're laughing at there, but there you go.
Who cares?
It's another Hynek. And there's my wife, Lisa.
It sure is.
And we were looking into the party, and they had a jazz band playing kind of cool jazz, Under the Sea, do, 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 do. And they had the singer out there in the little cocktail dress. They were serving us
cool.
caviar and all kinds of yummy stuff. And there you go.
Outstanding.
And there's the billboard outside for Project Blue Book, which should have had the third season, but I think COVID kind of did its number on that show. They canceled it, unfortunately.
Okay.
That's a missile silo, and they're built much like the entrances to underground bases I've found.
Yes,
so you can kind of see the shack up on top there that just looks like nothing, and then you go down and you've got a little elevator, and there you go. And I'm sure there's better illustrations, but that was one that I had.
Like it might be an old Atlas silo to me. I, through a friend, a fascinating guest on this show, Pat Cooligan, who is a former nuclear weapons specialist at Bentwaters and in law enforcement and working for Homeland Security in more recent years. Pat had a friend who was basically a retired Army officer who had become the ranking expert on the early Atlas silos of the early 60s. All of the information had been analog, not properly stored. And to the embarrassment of the Pentagon, to a degree, he became the go-to guy. And he owned several different silos at different points, renovated them in different ways. But this one that we visited, it was being restored to what it was like in 1962, minus the hardware. There's a 120-foot, gantry hole in the ground, and that is the exact layout. A very haunting afternoon of about 4 hours, but there is more going on under our feet than I think almost any of us can really imagine, and that's not conspiracy-related nonsense. This is simply a fact of
Yes.
life in military and government, and now, of course, industry and medical research and what have you. Could have been that simple.
Yeah, look at that. It's just like a shack in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, I've recently met somebody with another case I'm working on where their father was a mucky muck in the Air Force and took them to work. And they tell the same story my mom did, that they went to a concrete bunker, that there was an elevator that went like a mile down. This was in White Sands. And so yeah.
Jesus, well, the missile park has got to be one of the most surreal sights I've ever seen. All of these, wonderful primary painted missiles against the beautiful blue sky, every one of them capable of mass murder and displayed like it's some kind of Disneyland on acid sort of layout. Hey,
that's us. And
yes.
Check it out. There's Marla Fries. There's Jeff. There's Greg Bishop sitting in the corner there.
Sure is.
Denise Marcel and her sweetie there in the end.
That was a great evening. I had come in to do an Ancient Aliens and called the troops together. We went out to have a Mexican restaurant, and then I went home and did my homework and did the show, and they put me on the red eye, and back I went. But That was a great evening.
That sure was. And this is at Alien Con. That's my dear friend N.K. Cranda. Both of our, I mean, you're her mentor as well. We, you mentored me, Peter, and I try to mentor others as well. And I'm very proud of N.K. And that's Yvonne Smith on my right, who's does the lion's share of the hypnotic regressions in Southern California. She's very good at it, and I send a lot of people to her.
Yeah. Jeez.
Well, there you go. That's me abducting the alien for a change. Another shot from that's Kathleen there, and
you're
that's Denise, and I'm on the far end there.
Irina Scott.
I
could
love
talk
her.
about her all night, and we
oh my
won't.
God, yeah.
She's been a guest on the show as well, and one of our favorite people in the work.
I love Irina.
The shot of you and your mom,
mommy and me. There's Greg and myself. That was right before the pandemic started.
Yeah.
That's my mom towards the end of her life.
Lovely picture.
That was, I don't know, she was around maybe a month after that. No.
I'm moving
Julian Lennon.
Yeah, oh, for gosh sakes, of course.
It's hanging out with Julian. My buddy Paul Zolo, he took us out to Julian's record release party. So I did get to meet a Lennon. I know there's some people, questionable guys, that say that they met his father, but I did meet Julian. There's Paul, my buddy.
That's Paul Hynek, you bet.
That's a show that I did for the Travel Channel, Storming Area 1 special. I told them, don't do it.
Outstanding. And believe it or not, Earl, I am going to have to cut to the chase here because we have blown through our 2 hours.
She blinded me with science, Peter, so that's perfect ending there.
Is there a website or any place in particular where folks can go to?
MUFON.com, report a UFO or report a abduction, and if you're in Southern California, you'll probably come to me.
That's great.
I'm on Facebook as just Earl Grey, and you'll see a state director for Southern California there.
Excellent. And Earl, I can't thank you enough for being my guest this week, and we will be in touch soon. But next week's guest will be Victor Vigiani. He is the news director of Zealand Communications, an international news service, and his study of anomalous aerial phenomena, research and analysis of extraterrestrial issues spans more than 40 years. and involves UFO sighting reports, investigation, academic and radio journalism with a primary focus on UFO ET government disclosure. If you have enjoyed this show, please tell your friends. Stay well. Stand up for what you believe in.
Thank
And be
you so
kind
much,
to each
Peter.
other. See you next week.